Hi guys, welcome to today's documentary session on a very important topic. This is a topic that we deal with on both medicine as well as surgical levels. And the thing is that, we are scared of this particular presentation because many of the patients expire because of negligent practices. And if the doctors are not able to correctly diagnose or treat this disease, it is a huge negligence on our side. So, besides it being an important practical topic, this also deserves equal importance in case of NEET PG as well as in our academic sessions. So, let's look into the topic proper. We are going to deal with pancreatitis. Today, I'll be dealing with two main topics. That is acute pancreatitis and chronic pancreatitis, both of which are of significance in both in our academic sessions in our college days as well as NEET PG. So let's look into a case scenario now. Raju, a 30-year-old male, a chronic alcoholic, presents with sudden onset of epigastric pain that radiates to the back. Now, I've already dealt with causes of acute abdomen, the medical causes of acute abdomen. All of this have to be kept in mind. Now, the two main things that are in this, two main clues that are in this question are, it is an epigastric pain and this pain radiates to the back. So, the first thing that we think of in this case is pancreatitis, okay, or as we call it, acute pancreatitis. So once I finish off dealing with the particular chapter, we'll come back to this question and then let's see how we're going to answer this. Okay, so let's study a little bit about pancreas. The pancreas secretes about 1500 to 3000 ml of isoosmotic alkaline fluid per day. The pH is less than 8. Okay, so there are approximately 20 enzymes that are being secreted from the pancreas. Bicarbonates also released to provide the optimal pH for the function of the enzymes. We know that the gastric secretion is acidic. So if everything is in the acidic medium, all the enzymes will not be activated. So the pancreas itself has to do some modifications in such a way that the pancreatic enzymes become activated. Okay. Now, the regulation of secretion. Now, how it happens is that the pancreas stores these as zymogen granules, okay, and they wait for certain hormonal and neural signals so as to know when to release this into the duodenum or into the intestine proper. Okay, so there are certain enzymes that are released. Now hormones that are released. Secretin, okay, that helps in water and bicarbonate secretion. Gastric acid itself stimulates the release of secretin that in turn helps in water and bicarbonate secretion. The third hormone, cholecystokinin, it augments the action of secretin as well as it itself increases the secretion from acinar cells of the pancreas. Okay. Now the parasympathetic nervous system or acetylcholine, okay, acetylcholine will also activate or help secretin in doing the same. Okay, now VIP or vasoactive intestinal polypeptide also helps the secretin. So these all things help secretin as well as have an individual action. So this is the neural action. These three are the hormonal actions. Okay, now another important neurotransmitter is the nitric oxide. So just to have a small basic idea of what all are the enzymes within the pancreas, we should know that pancreas has certain enzymes. Now, what are the enzymes? We have the amylases, okay, that help in digestion of carbohydrates. I'll just say it very simply so that you will get an understanding. Then you have the lipase, the co-lipase, the phospholipase, okay. Now, lipase is inhibited by the bile salts, but the co-lipase helps the lipase to not be inhibited, so their actions will be predominant, okay. Then you have the proteolytic enzymes, which are the major trypsinogen and the chymotrypsinogen. These are called the endopeptidases. Now, what are the exopeptidases? We know the carboxypeptidases as well as the aminopeptidases. So, these are two other exopeptidases that we have an idea about. Then we have the ribonucleases, okay. So, then how does this release occur? We know of an enzyme called the enterokinin, which is released from the duodenal mucosa. This goes and activates the trypsinogen. It cleaves the lysine-isoleucine bond, and that gets converted into trypsin. Now, trypsin once activated, it activates all other enzymes. This is the in short mechanism of how hormones or how the enzymes are released from the pancreas. Okay. Now, then there is another concept of auto-protection of pancreas, because all these things, they break down either carbohydrates, they break down the fats, or what, they break down the proteins. Now our body itself is made of all these three, or the pancreas itself is made of all these three things. So if all these enzymes that are mainly used for digestion are released within the pancreas, just imagine the destruction. Now that is what we call as pancreatitis. Okay, so the body itself has certain mechanisms to prevent this activation of the enzymes. Let's look into 4 of them. Packaging of the pancreatic proteases in the precursor form, so the proenzyme form. Then there is a calcium homeostasis. We know that for the release of certain enzymes from the inside of the zymogen granules, what happens is the calcium binds, it releases. So if you put it in a hypocalcemic state, there will not be release of the precursors of the enzymes from the zymogen granules. Okay, so that is how you keep it in a calcium homeostasis. Okay, then you have an acid-base balance, and then you have the synthesis of protective protease inhibitors. Okay, so these are the 4 mechanisms by which the body itself prevents the activation of enzymes within the pancreas, and hence preventing pancreatitis as such. Okay, so let's come into the topic proper of acute pancreatitis. What are the main causes of acute pancreatitis that you know? Of course, all of you might say alcoholic, but that's not what it is. Okay, actually, very few person, or almost nearly close to 5 to 13% is all of alcoholics that suffer from pancreatitis. The most major cause of pancreatitis is gallstones. Okay, now do you want to know an interesting fact? Microlithiasis, that is less than 5 millimeter of gallstone, the presence of that gallstone increases the risk of pancreatitis by 4 times. I don't say that, Harrison says that. Okay, so this is the first and the foremost cause of pancreatitis all over the world. It is gallstones. Then we have alcohol. And then third, we have hypertriglyceridemia. Now, hypertriglyceridemia can be because of a lot of causes. That could be genetic, that could be hereditary causes. It could be because of another cause like diabetes. So, the control of those things will help in hypertriglyceridemic pancreatitis. Okay, but just remember that hypertriglyceridemia itself is a cause for pancreatitis. Now, then we have iatrogenic, that is ERCP induced. Do you know that to find chronic calcific pancreatitis, we have a particular part of the test. I'll come to that. ERCP is used to detect pancreatitis itself. Okay, sometimes ERCP is used to detect the presence of gallstones. So doing this itself might precipitate pancreatitis. Now, there are certain ways in which you prevent it, like using rectal NSAIDs or serine proteases. You can help in reducing the chances of an ERCP. Sometimes even putting a stent, a duct stent, pancreatic duct stent is also needed before you're doing an ERCP to reduce the chances of ERCP related pancreatitis. Let's look into some of the drugs. Azathioprine, 6-mercaptopurine, sulfonamides, estrogens, and 5-ASA. Okay, now look at this. Okay, so that means those people who are on OCPs can develop pancreatitis. Yes. Then people who have diabetes. Then we have trauma related to pancreas. I told you that there is an auto protection. If there is anything that causes trauma to the pancreas itself, that itself can cause pancreatitis. Now let's look into some of the uncommon causes of pancreatitis. Vascular causes, vasculitis, some connective tissue disorders, the cancer of the pancreas, sometimes obstruction by like pancreas divisum. Then it can be cystic fibrosis. There can be renal failure, or even hypercalcemia. So, hypercalcemia, hypertriglyceridemia are all present as causes of pancreatitis. Now, let's look into the pathogenesis. How does pancreatitis occur? Okay, so there is an initial phase. I said trypsinogen is the first enzyme that is activated after enterokinase is being released from duodenal mucosa. It activates trypsinogen and becomes converted into trypsin. Now, this trypsin is what activates all the other brothers in the field. Okay, so that means if trypsin is activated by any chance inside, then it is going to cause catastrophe. So the same thing happens in case of the pathogenesis of pancreatitis. What happens first? I'll just tell you in a small detail just to understand how this occurs. Okay. So as already mentioned, whenever there is a cause, there could be a leak that results in activation of trypsin. Okay. So trypsinogen gets converted to trypsin. Okay. Now this guy, what he does is, whenever there is an inflammation, trypsin will go and activate closer. So the closer he will start proteolysis on his own. Okay. And then what happens? The body identifies the presence of inflammation. Now what happens? The warriors come into play. The neutrophils and the macrophages, they go in and settle into the pancreas. They are trying to do something good for the pancreas, but ultimately it is bringing in a lot of problems. So cytokines will be elaborated, bradykinin will be elaborated. Okay, now what happens is, once the neutrophils and the macrophages, the warriors, come into play, and then all these cytokines and radiating are elevated and all are elaborated, then the trypsin, what he does, trypsin has already played his role. He activates the other enzymes as well. And then it goes into a full-blown acute pancreatitis. So that is the third phase. Okay. So see how intricate this pathogenesis is. This is the form that is most commonly occur. This is what is believed to occur. This is how the pathogenesis occurs. Okay. Now let's look into some of the symptoms. I told you it is very easy to diagnose, but please, when these patients come to you with a case of epigastric pain radiating to the back, what I do is I put the patient forward in a Mohammedan position. Okay. So if the patient is in the Mohammedan position and the patient is saying that it is reduced, then I suspect pancreatitis. Okay. So abdominal pain is the first and foremost symptom. I'm going to tell you a lot of other symptoms. It is not important. These are all mentioned in the textbooks, but nausea, vomiting, chemical peritonitis, fever, tachycardia and hypotension along with shock is a very common thing that presents. Fever and tachycardia and hypotension can be a common presentation of a patient with pancreatitis. But first and foremost is always the presence of abdominal pain. I have not seen one case of a pancreatitis that does not present with abdominal pain. So whenever there is an abdominal pain, epigastric pain radiating to the back and relieved in a sitting forward, leaning forward position, or otherwise called as the Mohammedan position, then it is suspected to be a case of pancreatitis. Okay. Now why does shock occur in these? I told you cytokines are elaborated, bradykinins are elaborated. Okay. So there is an inflammatory response playing in the body. So there is a shift of fluid, okay, into the retroperitoneal space. When there is a shift of fluid into the retroperitoneal space, there is automatically hypotension falling in. That is why fluid management is one of the first things that you have to do in case of a pancreatitis. Okay. So hypovolemia, vasodilatation, increased vascular permeability because of the bradykinins and systemic effects of the proteolytic and the lipolytic enzymes. Do you know that sometimes you can even have subcutaneous nodules because of the fat lysis that takes place because of the enzymes that are released from pancreatitis. Okay, so these are several things, with several interesting things. Now let's look into two certain terms. Okay, Cullen sign, C-U-L-L-E-N-S. Okay, it has a C and it has a U. So this is the bluish discoloration around the umbilicus. Okay, which has a U and a C in its term. So that is how you remember Cullen's. Now the next one is the Turner's sign, T-U-R-N-E-R-S. How do you turn? You turn like this and you turn like this. So you have the flanks in action. Okay, so the bluish discoloration, okay, or the reddish to brownish discoloration in the flanks. Okay, that is how you identify Turner's syndrome, Turner's sign. Okay, so now for anything, before I say this is pancreatitis, I need a certain criteria. There is a definition, or there is a diagnostic criteria by which I can diagnose the presence of pancreatitis. Okay, so how do you say? As I already mentioned, typical abdominal pain in epigastrium, elevation in lipase and or amylase, amylase. Okay, so first it is lipase. Without lipase elevation, I can never say, because amylase is a very non-specific enzyme. Okay, I'll tell you the reason why. I'll go into this after this. Confirmatory findings of acute pancreatitis on imaging. Okay, when you have 2 out of 3 of these criteria, this is what is called as the Atlanta criteria. That is when you call it as acute pancreatitis. Now let's look into why amylase is not specific for this. Okay, see, amylase, as is released from pancreas, it can also be released from the salivary glands. Okay, then how do I remember the other sources of amylase? FLTT. So fallopian tube, the lungs, the thyroid, and the tonsils. Okay, so again repeat, you have pancreas in the salivary glands, as well as you have the fallopian tubes, you have the lungs, you have the tonsils and the thyroid that release amylase along with the pancreas. So if that is the case, how will I know whenever there is a hyperamylasemia that this is from the pancreas or not? But lipase is not an enzyme like that. So anytime you want to confirm the presence of amylase in pancreatitis, and you have only a single enzyme to do, what will you do? You will do the serum lipase and not amylase. Okay, so there are several other conditions in which hyperamylasemia is present. Now, if I look, it will tell you some conditions. It could be diabetic ketoacidosis, it could even be burns, it could be renal failure. So how would you remember this? Anything related to the pancreas? Yes. So pancreatic divisum, pancreatic trauma, pancreatic infiltration, pancreatic necrosis, pancreatitis, all these can have hyperamylasemia. The next one, as I mentioned,